Where is Sean Payton going to land next season? Will it be in Arizona? Will it be in Houston? Will it be here in Charlotte, the Carolina Panthers? Will it be in Denver, or might he stay in LA at Fox? We'll ask Benjamin Allbright of 850 KOA in Colorado right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure to watch our show and subscribe to our show over on our Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. And you can check us out wherever you listen to this podcast. Just be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss a single edition of the show. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, or every single Friday here on the show, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. Participate on this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag on Locked On Panthers, either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise? Then this is the game for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners, my listeners, getting 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. All right, so on today's episode of Locked On Panthers, going to talk to Benjamin Allbright of 850 KOA Radio. They are the Broncos flagship, the Rockies flagship. They are a radio behemoth out there in the Mile High City. But he's not just a Broncos guy. This dude is plugged into all 32 teams in the National Football League, including your Carolina Panthers, my Carolina Panthers, our Carolina Panthers. He has plenty of insight to give us on what's going to happen with this coaching search, as he in Denver is trying to figure out what's going to happen, whether it's Sean Payton's going to be the next head coach there, David Shaw, who retired from Stanford, is going to be Dan Quinn, the former Falcons coach and current Cowboys defensive coordinator. And we also know what's going to happen here. If it's not Sean Payton, is it Shane Steichen? According to one of the betting sites out there, Shane Steichen is currently the top odds to be the next head coach here in Carolina, with Steve Wilks being the second guy and then Sean Payton third. So how will that work out down the road? We'll ask Benjamin Allbright about that all right here on the show, as he'll give us the Broncos perspective of their search for Sean Payton and where the ownership is willing to give up a ton of draft compensation. And he'll try and give us the Panthers perspective as well, as he, again, is pretty plugged in on what's going on in the NFL. So going to talk to Benjamin Allbright here just after this on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app, and I can't tell you how much fun I've had competing against my fellow Locked On NFL hosts this season. Chris Carter, the host of Locked On Steelers, was our Locked On NFL champion this season. Well, now it's your turn to compete, but more on that later. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to glory, trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season. And we certainly know about ups and downs here in Carolina. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. They've created, no, not they, but we have created a Locked On League for you to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Can you be the ultimate Locked On Football GM? Choose the Locked On League in the app to join. And can you create a football dynasty? Locked On Panthers listeners get a 100% free boost to your franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, start your dynasty today. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, and as promised, Benjamin Allbright. Follow him on Twitter at Allbright NFL. He's a host and a reporter for 850 KOA out in Denver, Colorado, the Denver Broncos flagship, the Rockies flagship. If you guys know radio, it is an absolute behemoth out there on the West Coast. I'm going to consider Denver the West Coast, Ben. I don't know if you do, but I'm going to in this situation. But he is super plugged in to the league, not just the Panthers and the Broncos, but all the 32 teams. And glad enough to have him on here on the show to kind of give us some insight on what's going on with the Panthers coaching search and also the Broncos coaching search, as there's another guy in Sean Payton who's interested in both jobs and both teams are interested in him. Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. I apologize about being in the car here, so hopefully I'll get to a parking lot here in just a second so we can actually do this. That's my bad. But, yeah, nobody out here would consider Denver the West Coast. The Rocky Mountain region is probably the best way to put it. They would consider more, like California and stuff, but I don't think anybody out here, since you got Nevada and Utah separating us, I don't think they consider too much the West Coast, although there's a lot of West Coast transplants here. But, no. We got I guess we got some shared interest stuff to talk about here today, and hopefully I can bring some clarity and let you guys know what I know and go from there.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. That's exactly what we're hoping to get from you today. So it kind of feels like we're all in a holding pattern here in week 3 of the coaching season here in the NFL. Last year, it wasn't until right after the conference championship games going to the Super Bowl when hires are first announced. So I didn't expect the hire to be here on January 24th as we're doing this interview with January 25th as the show's coming out. But Sean Payton seems to be the guy that the Panthers are waiting for, the Cardinals are waiting for, the Broncos are waiting for, the Texans are waiting for. That's 4 of the 5 teams that have an opening. Is it right to have that assessment that the entire NFL is kind of in this holding pattern to see what happens with Sean Payton first before any hires are officially made?
I don't know that I'd put it that way. I think that the media stuff on Sean Payton far outpaces league interest on Sean Payton. I don't think that I think the Denver Broncos have kind of pivoted in another direction. We'll see if they circle back around on it, but I think they're sort of out on him right now as they focus in a different spot. I don't think he was ever a candidate for the Texans. Despite the interview, Carolina, I don't think that's the direction they're going. I think that's going to wind up probably being either Shane Steichen or Steve Wilks. But and then Arizona, I don't know their level of interest on him. General manager Monty Austin-Ford is off the Parcells tree, but has never really worked with Sean Payton before. So, yeah, I don't know about their interest in Sean Payton. I know they have Dan Quinn in for a second interview as we're talking, but that's the one that kind of remains to be seen for me. I tend to think that it's trending towards Sean Payton goes back to television and comes out next cycle when one of the jobs he actually wanted, like one of the LA jobs or Dallas, something like that, possibly comes open. And that's not to say that, again, he and the Broncos couldn't circle back around, but I think for right now, I think that's off.
So is it the lack of interest in Sean Payton from the ownership side, or is it lack of interest from Sean Payton in these jobs that are available? Because you look at the market, and when the Panthers are considered one of the top jobs, if not the top job, then that's not the strongest of coaching markets out there in the NFL this year.
Yeah, you only have 5 openings this year. It's a very light year in terms of openings. And then, on top of that, I think that, what Sean Payton wants and what it takes to acquire him, I think that's a turnoff for a lot of teams. I don't think teams just want to pony up the 20 to 25 million. I don't think that teams want to pony up the draft compensation that New Orleans wants, which is basically something equivalent to the 16th to 12th pick on the draft value chart. Doesn't necessarily have to be, a first rounder so much as it adds up to that. So that's the thing. I think if the Denver Broncos were trying to, get, in on that market, I think you would, you'd have to pay that pick that they have, the Niners pick, which currently would be 28th this year, and then probably 2/3. I think that's a turnoff for the Denver Broncos, who are already short on draft capital thanks to the Russell Wilson deal. So I just think that there's kind of a cool sentiment here, and then teams are asking themselves, well, who is Sean Payton? What does he bring to the table? And is he this guy, or did Drew Brees win him all those games? Did he quit on his football team, or was he burnt out? Well, if he was burnt out, why did he just go back to coaching his own team? And I think there are a lot of questions that surround Sean Payton, and some off-field stuff as well. And I think those things all kind of come together to kind of say, hey, look, is this really the direction we want to go with the 6-year, $25 million per deal and giving up all those draft picks?
You talk about compensation there, that it needs to add up to the 16th to 21st pick in the first round. Now, the Panthers hold the 9th overall pick, and I've been sitting here wondering the entire time, would New Orleans even trade Carolina Sean Payton without taking the 9th pick, considering he's going to be in division, and they're a team that needs to find a quarterback, and who knows how they want to do it, whether it's free agency or via the draft. But I have a hard time believing that New Orleans would want to give the Panthers both Sean Payton and the ability to get their quarterback of the future. Is the compensation the same for Carolina, or is that more so for Denver?
I think the compensation, like I said, is somewhere between the 12th and 16th, pick of the first round based on the draft chart. I think Carolina would probably have to pay a little in-division tax, if you know what I mean. But, I like the ninth pick, they may be willing to settle on that, or maybe they get the ninth and another pick and then send something back to make it balance out. There are options there, I think, as far as that goes. I just think that Carolina would have to pay. The Carolina price would be a little bit higher, I believe, because it's in division.
Yeah, and for me too, I don't love the idea of trading draft compensation for a coach. You've seen plenty of franchises, the ones that are all playing right now, that have had success without having to give up assets. If they want to pay a coach $25 million, that doesn't matter to me. That's up to David Tepper. That's up to the Broncos owner and the ownership out there in Arizona, and of course in Houston as well. If Sean Payton is interested in any of those jobs, end up getting into those jobs. So the compensation for me draft-wise was always a turnoff. Now, as far as Carolina, you talk about that they don't seem to have much interest after meeting with Sean Payton on Monday. Any insights to why that might be the case with David Tepper?
I think he's turned off by the cost. I don't think that he wants to pay the draft picks. I think he thinks that that the team that he owns has got a ready-built defense. They've got a good offensive line. They've got some pretty good skill position players, that they just need to solve the quarterback position. And I don't think he wants to give up the draft picks that it would take to acquire Sean Payton. I think that that he understands that that maybe pairing trading up for a C.J. Stroud and pairing him with a Shane Steichen might solve everything that they have there. If you look at the work that Shane Steichen did with Jalen Hurts. So, I don't think he thinks the cost or the juice is worth the squeeze in this particular case.
Yeah, and you're talking about now Shane Steichen, Steve Wilks, who appear to be the top two guys at this point in time and to potentially get the Carolina job. Now, Ben Johnson was seemingly the favorite before even getting an opportunity. He'd never even interviewed here in Carolina. Do you know any reason why Ben Johnson decided not to come to Carolina to interview? Was it more just his loyalty to Dan Campbell? Was there just some hesitation with ownership? What was it that led them not wanting to interview and going back to Detroit?
I think it was a combination of those things, and I wouldn't say that he was the prohibitive front runner, but he would have been in that group. He would have been in the final as three with Shane and Steve. I think that Ben Johnson is a one-year offensive coordinator. I think that he's looking at this and thinking, well, what if I go back and there's going to be more openings the next time? I'm going to be better prepared for this. Because a lot of this stuff came out of nowhere. And so I think that for Shane Steichen, I think for Ben Johnson, I think a lot of this has to do with, let me take a look at this landscape and be better prepared for this, come with a better staff plan, come with those kinds of things in the next interview process, because the only two jobs that he was really in play for would have been Indy, where, he didn't particularly want to go, and I'm not sure he would have gotten that job, and then Carolina, where he would have been a finalist, but I'm still not sure he would have gotten the job, over Steichen, even though his name was bandied about in the media. I still think it's Shane's job to lose. So we'll see. But I think he went back because he realized that, that this is the opportunity for me to get better at the process of this. And there might be better job openings next time around. It looks like, the LA jobs could open next time. You could have a situation where Dallas opens. You could have a situation where, you have a great quarterback already in place kind of thing. And that really is a big thing. If you're a first-time head coach, how long are you going to get? And you better be in a very secure, very stable environment, because as we've seen, for instance, this year in Denver, you're a first-time head coach. You might not even make it your first year anymore. That's how bad the impatience is. So are you going to hitch your wagon to a situation you don't absolutely love and aren't 100% sure of?
Yeah. So you say Shane Steichen, it's his job to lose. Why?
I think that Dave Tepper has kind of made no secret of the fact that he really wants to pair a young quarterback with a young offensive mind that can develop him. And we've seen what Shane Steichen did with Jalen Hurts. They started off doing something, and then Steichen totally revamped that offense. And the Eagles have been on an absolute tear ever since they did that last year. I think he thinks that he can bring that success to Carolina. And I think he thinks that's the best plan for winning going forward. Whether I agree with it, disagree with it, whatever. I thought Steve Wilks did a pretty good job as the interim. I'm also one of these people that says that never hire the interim coach. It almost never works out. You kind of get that rally around the interim coach phenomenon that happens because teams regroup after the head coach gets fired, but and we saw that in Denver this year. The last two games, they were pretty freaking good, So I think that if you're if you're eyeballing Wilks, I thought he did a good job, and I think he made his case to get interviews elsewhere. But I think you want to, if you fire somebody, you kind of want to clean the culture out and start over. And I think that Steichen brings a new culture, a new look, and is shown that he is capable of cultivating an offense around a quarterback's strengths. And I think if Carolina's going to draft a quarterback, and I do think they will, and I think it'll be C.J. Stroud, I think that that's probably the direction that they want to go.
Yeah, and with Wilks, were you surprised at all that he has not interviewed elsewhere? I mean, obviously Arizona's not on the table, but the other jobs that are open, are you surprised that he didn't get an interview anywhere?
Not really. They're so limited, and most of these guys already knew who they wanted. You look at the Houston Texans; they've had John Gannon and DeMeco Ryans circled the entire time. And everybody knows it. You look at Denver, and they wanted somebody with head coaching experience, but the guys that they really wanted, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton initially, Dan Quinn, people like that. I think they kind of had that circled. I don't think Steve Wilks was really in play for them at all. I do think that the one name that you should keep your eye on in Denver is DeMeco Ryans if the Texans pass on him, but that's just one to keep your eye on there. As far as the rest of them go, I mean, Indy. I mean, what was Steve Wilks going to do up there as a head coach? I mean, Jim Irsay's all over the map, and that situation is kind of a little toxic. I'm not sure that I would necessarily be wanting to put my foot in that. And then, Arizona. I mean, they just fired Cliff and Steve Keim. You got Michael Bidwell, who's kind of a cheap owner, and Wilks obviously is not going to get an interview there based on how his last head coaching tenure there went. So you really,
he's also suing them. So
right. He's also in litigation with them. So that's the same reason, like Denver. People keep asking me why Denver's not considering Brian Flores, and I'm like, dude, he's suing them. I mean, it's like, what do you think that they're going to hire him because he's lying about some things that happened in the interview the last time? So to me, I just like looking at this. Wilks really had three options. I mean, he had four if you count Carolina, but the other three options were Indy, which is a hot, toxic mess he didn't want any part of. Denver, who was obviously going to go in a different direction, and Houston, which was going to go in a different direction. So why would you even take the interviews?
Yeah. I just wonder, is there a market for him maybe next cycle? Is he ever going to get a chance to be a head coach again? Because I'm looking at the NFL owners, did they take inventory and what he was able to do in Carolina this season and maybe think down the road, like, oh, this might be a guy?
Oh, absolutely. I think he'll go back and be a defensive coordinator or something like that for somebody this year and then get more interviews next cycle. There's another guy out there, Jarrell Avero, who, interviewed with every team. I think he's going to get, he'll be a hot name next cycle. It's hard. Like the sad part of this is it's twofold on top of everything else, right? There's a limited number of openings, everything else. It's also very difficult for one-year defensive coordinators, to get head coaching jobs. In an offensive league, everybody wants the hot young offensive person. That's why guys like Nathaniel Hackett get jobs over Dan Quinn, right? And then, I know. And then, on the flip side of that, it's hard unfortunately, it is still difficult for minorities to get head coaching, jobs. It still is. And that is very unfortunate, but it is an economic truth. And I don't know why people, I don't know why that is per se, because I don't think it's overt, outright racism, but I think it's struggled with rich old white dudes struggle to relate to young, energetic African-American men as in their leadership style. And I think that's a problem. I think that's what's kept some people from getting jobs they deserved. And so, I think that's part of it. I think that there's an element of that in it, as much as we want to think that we're making progress in that arena and we're all just like, hey, I want the guy that wins football games. I think sometimes people look at something and they say, this looks more professional to me. And that may be the wrong answer. That may not be the guy, or that may be the guy to lead your team and you don't know it. So, I think there are a lot of factors involved here. And, I think that I don't think it's any one thing, but I do think that there's an unfortunate set of circumstances, especially for minority defensive coordinators.
Yeah. And I'll say this as a young, energetic black man, that I understand that, look, people are going to want to hire who they're comfortable hiring. And when David Tepper hired Matt Rule, he said all the things that he saw in Matt Rule that he saw in himself. He used to be a short order cook. He dressed like crap, just like me, to be able to relate to him. And hell, that's like any business in America. You're going to hire people that you can relate to. And oftentimes that might be people from the same background as you, people that look like you. And the Rooney Rule, while it may be good intention, it's never going to stop owners from hiring who they want to hire. Because as you mentioned, why did Steve Wilks not get other interviews? Well, these owners already knew who they wanted to talk to, not based off of Steve Wilks' merit, whether he can be a good head coach or not, but just based off of who they want and what they don't want. So going back to the Shane Steichen part of it, the Panthers have also been interviewing defensive coordinators, including someone who's up there in Philadelphia right now. And I can't even remember. He's your former head coach down there in Denver. Can't remember his name right now. Who's the former Denver head coach?
Vance Joseph?
No, not Vance Joseph. After Vance Joseph.
Vic
Fangio. Yeah, Fangio. So Fangio's come here to interview as a defensive coordinator. Right. There's been links to possibly with him and Sean Payton. I've read reports that apparently what David Tepper, like you said, wants to have a young coach with a young quarterback. They also might want to get a veteran DC like Fangio. Does that look like that's could be the marriage and partnership here in Carolina?
I don't think so. I think Vic's got other options, and I think he prefers other options. He was linked to Sean Payton, but a lot of that was to try to bait the Chargers into cutting ties with Brandon Staley, because you would be getting Sean Payton and Vic Fangio, which if you look at the current, or I would say current as of a month ago, Chargers staff, Joe Lombardi, who was a Sean Payton disciple, and Brandon Staley, who was a Vic Fangio disciple, you would have just gotten the original versions of them, taking over that job there, which was kind of the plan. I don't know that Vic follows Sean wherever he goes. If he goes elsewhere, I certainly don't think that Vic would come back to Denver, or nor would Denver take him. But as far as the other jobs go, I think the Miami job might be a little bit more attractive to Vic. I think that certainly San Francisco and Philadelphia are probably more attractive if either one of those defensive coordinators get head coaching gigs, and I suspect both of them could. And then there's the LA Rams job if Raheem Morris gets the Colts job that would come available, and he has an affinity for Los Angeles and Sean McVay, so there could be a possibility there as well. So I think that there are other jobs available. Does that mean that Vic won't take the Carolina job? No, it does not necessarily mean that, but I think there are other jobs that are probably more attractive to him, and I think that they would have to get filled before he would take the Carolina job.
In the event that Shane Steichen does get this job, do you see one of these defensive coordinators being paired with him? Or do you think he'd get a chance to just hire his own guy?
I think he would try to bring his own staff. I don't know who, because I think, if John Gannon gets the Texans job, he's going to poach a lot of that Eagles staff too. And Rollis is a guy I think they would both fight over. I think he goes with Gannon. So it'll be interesting to see who Shane Steichen, because I don't know who Shane Steichen's defensive coordinator would be. So that's, that would be interesting to see. Just like I don't know who DeMeco Ryan's offensive coordinator would be. Those are two things that interest me very much, and I don't know who either one would be.
How about Wilks? What was his offensive plan? Do you know?
I don't off the top of my head. That's one I guess I could make a call and find that out. I probably should have before I did this, but I don't know the answer to that. Okay,
well, you find that out and let me know. So, but it feels like it's going to be Shane Steichen if he wants a job from what you've told us. Now, one last thing here for you, Benjamin, before I let you go. You had mentioned you think they're going to get a quarterback. You think it's going to be C.J. Stroud. What's the connection there with Stroud and the Panthers?
I just think that that's the guy Tepper likes. Based on persons that I've talked to, I think that Tepper thinks that C.J. Stroud is the guy. I think that he feels like that a marriage of him and Shane Steichen is one that would work. I don't think that they're very interested in Will Levis, and I don't think they're interested in Bryce Young. I think the size on Bryce Young, I think, is something that they might balk at. I think the Colts are all in on Will Levis. We'll kind of see how that goes. And so that really, as far as the top end quarterbacks, that really kind of presents a problem, because after that, then what are you looking at? Anthony Richardson or Hendon Hooker? Those are day two guys that, that I think, you're certainly looking at projects there that I'm not sure are ready for, ready for the NFL to be a starter. And I'm not sure they ever will be. I like both of them, but I'm not sure they ever will be. It's just it's a question of how long it takes for the person they are and the person they could be to meet. Okay. So from that insight, it looks like Houston at 2, Indianapolis at 3, likely taking Young and Levis. Does Carolina maybe think about trading up to 5 to Seattle with Scott Fitterer's connection there? Or could they just sit there and wait for Stroud at 9? Maybe wait, maybe trade all the way to 1. It just depends on what it takes, to do all that kind of stuff. A lot of this process still has to play out, but, a lot of this is me forecasting, but again, this is informed forecasting based on, having talked to people, and, people do have their eye on things that they like long before they have to make those decisions. So there's still time, and things could shake out a totally different way. But for right now, I think that preliminarily, that's how they feel about it.
Okay. And then last one here, just guessing. What would it take to get to 1?
That's up to the Bears and that whole situation. And that's assuming the Bears don't fall in love with anybody in this process either. I don't particularly think that Justin Fields has that job on lock at all. He used his legs quite a bit down the stretch, but then he got hurt, And that's a recurring problem. If you have a quarterback who uses legs a lot, they wind up getting hurt. Look at Lamar Jackson at the end of the season the last 2 years, and it takes away from their ability to be, present during a playoff run. And so, Justin Fields, led the league and was bottom of the league in a lot of categories that are bad categories: sack percentage, interception percentage, fumbles, those kinds of things. That's not to say Justin Fields can't grow as a passer. That's not to say he's not a dynamic athlete. That's not to say he won't become a great quarterback. And he'll get every opportunity as it sits to be the starter. But I wouldn't say that he has that on lock. And if they fall in love with another quarterback, Chicago could absolutely draft one.
All right, well, hell, actually, I got to ask you one more because I know I'm going to get asked this question because people here love to talk about the potential of trading for a former top 3 pick who hasn't panned out in his former home, Trey Lance. Is there going to be a market for him this offseason?
I think that the Niners are going to have a quarterback competition between him and Brock Purdy, and based on the way Purdy's played, I think most people would probably believe at this point he would win it. As far as Trey Lance being on the block, yeah, I think he would be. I think there'd be several teams willing to take a swing at that. I mean, there's all the talent in the world. He's very young and not a lot of wear and tear on the body. He's just, he's been injured the last couple of times. So you're going to have to figure if he's got an injury history that's going to carry on or if that stuff is over. He can throw the ball a mile. The question is slowing the game down for him and making accurate passes. And you're going to have somebody creative offensively that's willing to cater to what it is that he can do and slowly build in the things that he needs to work on.
All right, there it is. Benjamin Allbright, the host over at 850 KOA in Denver. Follow him on Twitter at Allbright NFL. A great follow. Like when you're looking at people out there on NFL Twitter that have real insight, this dude interacts with people all the time. And I sometimes sit there and I wonder, why do you interact with some of these folks, man? Because there's a lot of clowns out there coming at you every day, but you do a great job, man. I appreciate you giving some insight, taking your time here to come on the show.
I try, man. That's the thing. Interaction. We're all just dudes and chicks talking football at the end of the day. So, I try to interact with everybody that I can. It gets exhausting after a while, though.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man. But I appreciate you. Check them out. Broncos Country tonight. I know there's going to be some changes there, but that's still going on for you?
That is 100% still going on. And tonight it'll be myself, Steve Atwater, and maybe a few other people in there. So we'll have some fun with it.
Yeah, there we go. Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. And by the way, as you know, Jeremy Chin's uncle, former Broncos legend. So go check them out. Ben has plenty of insight on not just the Broncos, but the entire NFL. Ben, thanks again, man, for taking the time here on the show.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, we'll be back here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. I've told y'all for like 2 days now how excited I am about our brand new partner here at Locked On NFL and just the Locked On Podcast Network. The NFL playoffs, as we know, they're here. Championship Sunday, Chiefs, Bengals going at it for the second year in a row at Arrowhead. The 49ers headed east to play Philadelphia. Who is going to represent the NFC? Who's going to represent the AFC as they head out to Glendale, Arizona for the Super Bowl? Well, we're really excited about our new sports betting partner here at Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers, join today to get started with a $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose at FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more. A FanDuel official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Really good stuff there from Benjamin Allbright of 850 KOA out there in Denver. Check him out. Broncos Country tonight. He lost his co-host, got a promotion, so he's sitting there now doing a show of a Hall of Famer and Steve Atwater. So life's pretty good there for Benjamin, who is really plugged in to the league. And hopefully he'll let me know who Steve Wilks is planning on having as his OC so I can pass that along to y'all if I do get that information. But it looks like Shane Steichen, his job to lose. And as I told y'all when this began 3 weeks ago, if it's not going to be Wilks, if it's going to be an outside candidate, give me Shane Steichen. And also interesting to hear that Ben Johnson maybe was not the surefire favorite to get the job here in Carolina, that he had some concerns about ownership. And Sean Payton looks like he's going to stay at Fox. And if I'm him, I would do the same. I love the Carolina Panthers. Y'all know that. But let's just be honest with ourselves. For a franchise that's never had back-to-back winning seasons, currently does not have a quarterback, and there's a big question at ownership. If this is the top job, then the jobs out there are not good jobs. Texans, no way I would touch that job if I was a coach. Same thing with the Colts. Cardinals, really not interested, especially when your first year is going to be a wash because Kyler Murray is going to be injured basically the entire season. Denver, I could do that, but there's a lot of questions about Russell Wilson, and you have no idea if the ownership actually is good ownership and what's going on with the GM there in George Payton. So not a great market. So it makes sense that Ben Johnson would wait. Also makes sense for Sean Payton to wait. And if he really wants the Chargers job, then, well, wait and see if Brandon Staley is able to win a playoff game next season, because if he doesn't, he's probably getting fired and you can take that job. Or maybe Sean McVay decides to take your job at Fox and you guys can just trade places there in LA. And it warms my heart to know that David Tepper and a lot of the owners out there are not trying to give this dude $20 million and also have to part ways with a first-round pick in order to acquire his services. Sucks for New Orleans, but also, hey, screw them. And we don't want the Saints being able to get picks to help grow their team and potentially help them find a quarterback. So there's the latest there from Benjamin Allbright. Again, follow him on Twitter at Allbright NFL. Don't be a jerk. I see so many people that tweet at that dude that are complete awful human beings. Don't be that way. Be cool. Be a good fan. Be a good person, first off and foremost, and go out there, talk to them, interact with them. Does a really good job interacting with fans and giving some insight to all the NFL fans out there as far as what's going on with their favorite team. Again, dude's plugged in with every single team in the league. Love the job that he does and really appreciate him taking the time to talk to us today. Now, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all be sure to watch the show and subscribe to the show over on our Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. And be sure to check us out wherever you listen to the podcast, rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss a single edition. And follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where every single Friday I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on the show, either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. Participate on the weekly Friday mailbag this week. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we continue to have a guest on as Jeff Duncan, columnist down at the NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune. I think they're also another paper. It's like two papers combined down in New Orleans. He's been there for a long time. He's been on fire when it comes to what's going on with Sean Payton and his interview prospects in Arizona, and now it being paused in Denver and all of that. So we're going to have him on the show tomorrow as he'll give us more insight on if Payton's going to take a job, if he's going to go back to TV, and what it might take for Carolina to get Sean Payton if that's what happens. So we'll talk to Jeff Duncan tomorrow here on the show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Thursday.